Today, we're going to dive into the world of Confucius. He was a thinker whose ideas about virtue, our relationships, and how to build a good society have left a huge mark on the world for, well, over 2,000 years. And his work, it gives us a really powerful way to think about a question we still ask all the time. So, how do you build a stable, trustworthy society, especially when it feels like everything is falling apart? That was the big question Confucius was wrestling with, and his answer was pretty radical back then. He said, you don't start with more laws or with force. You start with the person. You start by building individual character. For him, a good society is built from the inside out.
You have to remember, Confucius, or Kongzi, lived during a really chaotic time in China's history called the Spring and Autumn period. Think collapsing authority, constant conflict, not a stable time. He was born in 551 BCE and spent years as a teacher and an advisor traveling around basically trying to find a ruler who would govern with moral virtue instead of just raw power. He never did find that ideal ruler, so he eventually went back home to just teach, and he left behind this incredible legacy that was all preserved by his students.
Okay, so at the very heart of everything Confucius taught is this idea called Ren. Now, you'll often see it translated as humaneness or benevolence, but it's so much deeper than just, being nice. Ren is this really demanding ideal of co-humanity. It's about reaching a kind of ethical maturity where your actions consistently help your whole community to flourish. It's not some abstract feeling. It's about how you actually treat the people right in front of you, day in and day out.
So, you might be asking, how do you actually develop this Ren? Well, Confucius's answer is through something called Li. Li is all about proper conduct, and it covers everything, from big formal ceremonies to simple everyday manners. But here's the crucial part. Li is not about just blindly following old traditions. For Confucius, these repeated, patterned actions are a kind of moral training. They literally shape your inner character, making virtue a stable habit, not just some idea you have. And the whole point of all this self-cultivation is to become what's known as a junzi, or an exemplary person. Now, originally, that term just meant an aristocrat, someone born into a noble family. But Confucius completely flipped the script. For him, a junzi is a moral role model whose authority comes from their character and their conduct, not their bloodline. I mean, this was a totally radical idea, that anyone from any background could become an example to others just through dedicated learning and practice. And this personal journey leads directly into politics. So how should a state be run? Confucius argues for leadership through de, which you can think of as moral force. De is this magnetic, attractive power that a truly virtuous leader has. A ruler who governs with real integrity and fairness and care, they inspire genuine trust and order. People follow them not because they're afraid, but out of respect. This is how you create a stable society from the top down, where good ethical behavior just spreads naturally like the wind moving over grass. Now, Confucius didn't actually write his own books, so the way we know his teachings is primarily through a text called the Analects, or Lunyu. His students compiled it after he died, and it's basically a collection of his sayings and conversations. It's not some systematic, dense philosophical book. Instead, it reveals his constant focus on practical ethics, the importance of learning, how to cultivate virtues like Ren and Li, this ideal of the junzi, and of course, the argument for government by moral force.
And there are a couple of other key texts that show how this whole philosophy expands. You have the Spring and Autumn Annals, which was a historical chronicle that was used to make moral judgments about political events, so applying ethics to the real world. And then there's the classic filial piety, which argues that respect for your parents is literally the root of all other virtues. It's inside the family where we first learn the roles and responsibilities that end up shaping our entire social lives.
So, if you boil it all down, the core takeaway from Confucius is this: a humane, stable society isn't something that's forced on people from the outside. It grows from the inside out. It all begins with the moral cultivation of each person. By practicing the day-to-day conduct that builds our shared humanity, we build the kind of character that earns trust, first in our families, then in our communities, and finally in our society as a whole. So, the question he really leaves us with is, what role does character play in building the world that we want to live in?